Hello, so today I want to be sharing with you my DesignLab journey. So DesignLab is like a UI UX bootcamp, and there are many different bootcamps like this. General Assembly, there's like Google UX bootcamps, and like there's many free online resources. But for me personally, I picked DesignLab. So I want to share with you my journey and my personal tips on like mentorships, making friends, as well as like choosing your capstones. So if you're watching this video, I think you might be someone who is considering taking up DesignLab, or is someone who is already in DesignLab and you're just like looking for like tips on how to like navigate through your time. So either way, I'll be leaving like timestamps below in this video, so feel free to just like fast forward to whichever content you feel like is the best for you. So I feel like the very first question that a lot of you might be thinking is, do I need a background in design to do like UI and UX? So for me, my background was actually in banking and finance. So I was working at a bank for about a year before I started my DesignLab journey. And based on what I observed, if you had like a graphic design background, I think it will kind of help with your like UI. So like the visual design aspect. But then again, I feel like with DesignLab, it's all about like UI and UX. So to kind of break it down, UX stands for user experience, whereas UI stands for user interface. And user experience is more about the whole flow of the app, the research, the user emotions that goes behind all of that experience design, whereas UI is like how it looks. So what I always kind of feel is something that looks good might not actually work well. So something with great UI might not have great UX. So that's why I feel like even if you do not have background in arts or design, it doesn't really put you at a disadvantage. At the end of the day, it's really how you think about the flow, the user experience, as well as like caring about the research, the user emotions. I think that all plays into part into how you get it done. Why did I pick DesignLab over like the others? The first one that I considered was General Assembly, because General Assembly is quite popular in Singapore. And at that time when I was looking to taking up like UX bootcamp, I called them, and during that time it was like the COVID period, so everything was still under lockdown and restriction. So I asked like, oh, do you guys have any in-person classrooms, because I would be very keen to like mingle with people. But they're like, oh no, there's like lots of restrictions, we can't offer all of those now, so everything will be conducted online. So I think because of that, that is when I decided to like look online for like other resources and like what other design bootcamps there are. So that is how I discovered DesignLab. And the reason why I picked DesignLab over General Assembly was mainly because their course was like 6 months, whereas General Assembly was 3 months or 3 weeks. I'm not really sure. So it kind of made more sense to me that, oh yeah, like I think I'll get better doing something over a longer period of time consistently. I personally am the kind of person that prefers to take things at my own pace. So I did DesignLab part-time. So for DesignLab, they do offer this admissions call. So if you are actually curious, I think I would strongly encourage you to just call the admissions team to have a chat, explain to them like your situation, what you're looking for in a design bootcamp. So I think definitely schedule for that call. It's totally free. I think the person was like super nice. And DesignLab is split up into a few different portions. So there's foundations and then there's academy. So I think if you're still deciding like is UX for me, I think you can kind of start with foundation, and I think that gives you a very good like dip in the toes of like what you can kind of expect from the DesignLab journey. So personally for me, I really enjoyed the foundations process. Like throughout the whole foundations, I felt like, yeah, like this is for me, like I can see myself moving forward. So that is why like after foundations, I decided to move on to like the academy program. So the first thing that I really want to stress is like the mentorship program. I think that is a pretty high selling point of the whole like UX bootcamp journey, where you get like professional mentorship from people who has been working in the field for the longest time. And mentors are kind of like all over the world. So for me, even though I was based in Singapore, my foundations mentor, she was based in Hong Kong. And then like after that, I had 2 other mentors, which is where I want to bring about this topic about mentor switch. And I know like usually at first they'll be like, okay, like you know, give them some time, you know, talk to them, understand what you need before like you request for a switch. So for me in phase 1, I had this mentor who honestly was pretty bad for many reasons, but one of the reasons that I really didn't like was that he wasn't professional. He kind of like, during our calls, sometimes he would receive calls from work and then he would have to like stop our call halfway to like attend his work call, and I'll just be like sitting there for like 15 minutes waiting for him to like end his call, which I felt was a bit unprofessional, even though he said, oh yeah, I can give you a bit more time afterwards. And as much as I appreciate you giving me a bit more time, I kind of do prefer if we kind of stick to our 1 hour designated time. That was when I kind of decided after a few weeks to do a mentor switch. And the thing about mentor switch is there's that risk, right? There's that risk that you kind of might switch to a mentor that you don't like. So here's my big tip for you. In DesignLab, when you submit your like work, there's always this portion where you can see like other students' work. And when you go onto other students' work, you can kind of see like how their mentors would comment and give feedback on their work. And I think that is really helpful because first of all, you can kind of like get to know like how you want to receive feedback. Do you want it like detailed in certain ways? Do you want like extra resources? Because definitely different mentors have different styles. So do take a look at like how other mentors have been commenting on other students' work. Kind of feedback to your mentor like, oh, I prefer if you can give me feedback on like this in this certain style for me to improve. With that, first of all, do try to communicate with your mentor what style you prefer. And then if you realize like if you like, you know, like it's really not working out, you kind of don't have to be afraid of like hurting their feelings. Like I feel very bad to say like I don't want you, but honestly, if the style is not working for you, I feel like, you know, just be nice about it, be polite about it, say like, oh, I prefer a different style, so I'm gonna do a mentor switch. So my personal tip on how I switch my mentor is that when I was looking at other students' works, there was this particular mentor that I really like her feedback style. She was very like specific and detail orientated. So I kind of reached out to her and be like, oh, do you have like extra capacity? Can you be my mentor please? And I think I was very lucky because she said yes. So I emailed the admissions team. I want to request for a mentor switch, and I spoken to this particular mentor and she said okay, so can we do a switch with like each other? So that was how I kind of like picked my mentor. So the next thing that I want to talk about is choosing your capstones. And after phase 1, there's phase 2 where you kind of just move into building like the portfolio project. And I think like with the capstones, it's very, very critical and important. First of all, you can kind of like do anything under the sun. So during my time, we kind of have like 3 different themes. So the first theme was like to build a website. The second theme was to build an end-to-end mobile application, and the last theme was to add a feature to an existing app. So that can be like to add a feature to Spotify, to add a feature to like Grab. And what I would strongly encourage is to really understand like what you like to do, what are your passions. For me, because I came from like a banking and finance background, I thought for like the longest time that I would do a project related to like a fintech app or a banking app or like something within like that sphere because that's my background. But honestly, with all of my capstones, I felt like I chose them by chance. I think at the end of the day, it's not so much about how like useful your app will be like in the real world, but I think it's more about what was your design thinking process and how you discovered like users' needs and users' pain points. When you have no limitations, I would say do something that you enjoy. One tip that a lot of people did recommend is to work with like a business. So let's say if your friends are like starting a business, or like you like want to reach out to like startups to see like if they are interested to like build a website or build an app prototype, you can kind of try to like go down that route of like sourcing for real life projects. And I did try to source for real life projects, but in the end I kind of also didn't work with any like businesses on my capstone. So now I'm just gonna share with you like the stories of how I like picked my different capstones. So for my very first capstone, I was just like searching on LinkedIn, like looking at startups, like oh, what kind of like people are looking for like UX designers. So I did like email a few different like startups and businesses to kind of ask like if they needed help to build a website or an app prototype. And there was this company, so what they were doing is they were doing something related to like petfluencers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term, but basically influencers but pets, and they are kind of like the modeling agencies that connect pet brands to these like petfluencers. So I reached out to them. They were pretty keen on like working together to build like this like user dashboards where like the pet owners can like manage the different brands that their petfluencers are working with. So that was something that they kind of wanted me to build for them. I kind of did mostly like everything. Like I did like the project brief, I did like the project requirements, I drafted out like the user interview research, and then like it kind of got to the point that I was like, oh, would you be willing to just kind of give like a token of appreciation for like the design? Immediately they just dropped me, like immediately they just dropped me. So I feel like especially in Singapore, like the art scene is so underrated that the debate is kind of like, is it worth paying for design work? Because like, why would I pay you? You know, I'm the one giving you the experience, so why should I be paying for design work? So I think it really depends on you. If you're okay working for free, then you know, go ahead. At that point, I was honestly just like on the fence. Like, I didn't mind, I just kind of asked and they dropped me, which was kind of okay, and I think it was better because anyway, I just proceeded with the project. Like, I like the idea of like petfluencers and working with pet brands. So what I kind of did is I just changed the company name, changed the logo, and I rescoped a bit of the project brief, and I honestly really enjoyed that project and I learned a lot. So like, no regrets. Personally for me, like it has been one of my dreams to like work abroad, and like especially like to work in Korea. So I was kind of just like on LinkedIn searching like, oh, what kind of like Korean companies would hire like a foreigner to work for them. So I was scrolling through and I applied for a few, and there was this one particular Korean startup. So what they were building this app for people experiencing long distance relationships. So it can be like a romantic partner or it can be like family. I interviewed with them, I went through like all the processes, first, second, third round, and it kind of just got to the point that I was almost hired. But the reason why I wasn't hired was because of like the visa issues. So they kind of said like, okay, we'll reach out to you again in like 3 months, because when we get our next round of funding, then we'll see if we can like get the visa for you. So I was like kind of like, okay, like I was pretty confident about it, and I was like telling all my friends like, oh, I think I'm gonna go to Korea to work because like this Korean startup is gonna like hire me. Because I was so excited. I was like, you know what, but before I get my job, let me do my research, you know, let me prepare for my job. So I kind of took on that independent project. I drafted out like my own project brief, my own project requirements. I conducted my own like user interviews to come up with a set of like feature prioritizations. That kind of became like my second capstone, which is where I developed an app for couples experiencing like long distance relationship. And honestly, even my mentor said like that was my best project yet, and it was like pretty unique in a sense that she hasn't really seen like any of her students design any of these kind of apps. I think through that process, I kind of realized that the kind of apps that I want to design for, I want to design for apps that are closer to like users' lifestyles, like user emotions, like their daily habits. So that can be something like a meditation app, a therapy app, compared to like a banking app or like dashboard design. Definitely with your capstones, do also reflect about what you enjoyed during the process, and give a think about what kind of design industry that you want to work in, be it whether it's like finance or like e-commerce, as you're doing your capstones, to reflect on that process. So now I want to talk about like the last capstone, which is the adding a feature to an existing app. Something that my mentor actually recommended to me was to pick on like a local project. So in the Singapore context, it could be like, oh, add a feature to Grab, or add a feature to like SingPass and Trace Together. Especially when you're presenting your portfolio to future recruiters, having a local project does give it like quite a cute niche. Oh, you really thought about like how does this fit into the local context, how it fits this particular user persona of like the local people. So that was something that she recommended, and I thought about it, and honestly I was like, there's nothing to add. Like all the apps that we have were like pretty great. Anyway, I didn't do that, but that is something that you can consider. I honestly struggled with picking my last capstone because I didn't know what kind of feature I wanted to add to what kind of app. So I spent 2 weeks pondering. There was honestly nothing that I felt very strongly for. I pondered about it for like the longest time, and at the end of the day I decided to do like language learning with Spotify, which is to add a language learning feature to Spotify. And I did the project brief, I did my user interviews, I even drafted like my mid-fidelity prototypes. But to be honest, I just like wasn't feeling it. Like I wasn't feeling the project. So I took a pause. And that is something that DesignLab does offer. You can take a pause anytime during your academy for like, I think a maximum of 4 weeks. I just took a pause to go for holiday. So I kind of went to Europe at that time. During that time, I was still like interviewing and just like applying for jobs just to like get a sense of what I want to do. So I interviewed with like a few like Singaporean companies as well as apply for some roles overseas. What I kind of decided is that I wanted to work for like a global company. So when I was in Europe, I actually interviewed with a few different companies. So this company that I interviewed with, and then they gave me a design test. But because like I was on holiday, so I was like, oh, I'm on holiday now. Can I give it to you like when I'm back? And they were like, yeah, sure, okay. And when I came back, I did the design test and I submitted it. And that was like a month after our interview. So I wasn't really sure if they were still gonna hire me or if they've hired someone else because it has been like a month. And then we had a few different calls, and this is the company that I'm working for now. And so like after I got like hired, I kind of asked like, oh, is it okay if I use like this design test project as part of my portfolio? And they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. I just tweaked a bit of like the project brief and did additional user interviews and usability testings, and then that kind of became my last portfolio. And that was also because it suited the criteria of adding a feature to an existing app. So that was kind of like how I decided on all my capstones. But I feel like everyone's journey is gonna be different, so definitely take a time to think about what you like to do. Even with the different capstones that you're doing, what did you enjoy, what did you not enjoy? Because certain people have different niche. Like some people are really into like gamification, so build your portfolio to more like gamification projects, whereas some people might be more towards like finance, fintech, crypto. Do more projects down that route. Do kind of like take your time, because at the end of the day, when you do like have your portfolio together and you present it to the recruiters, it's always best like if you're like passionate about like the projects that you're doing. I think recruiters also do appreciate and they do enjoy hearing someone being passionate about like the projects that they have done or like they have worked on. So definitely choose your capstones wisely. So I also want to talk a bit about group crits, because honestly group crits was one of like my favorite things to do. It was one of the ways that I like made friends. There are many different time slots that you can sign up for. I personally like to attend my classes like at night, like 11 p.m. because I can't do any work at night. So I'm just like, I'm going to attend my class, feel productive, and then go like, do what works for you. Like there will be slots like in the morning, in the afternoon, and because it's like a global like design course, there will be lots of different time slots based on the time zones that you're in, and it's a very good way to meet like your global classmates. And why do I want to like emphasize on the idea of like global classmates? Because I feel like it's one of the most value-adding things that came for me. Like my first few sessions, I kind of just went in with the mindset like, okay, I'm just here to like sit and chill. If you really do want to get like the full value out of it, always have some kind of work to present, even if it's like unfinished work. Just let everyone know like, oh, like my work is unfinished, but I would still like to like present and get feedback. I really enjoyed like just having my classmates from all over the world, States or like Europe or like Asia or like wherever they're from. I think it's always very interesting because even with design, sometimes when you've been using apps like in a local context for the longest time, you get so like sucked into it. So one example is I did this project related to insurance. I had this field that kind of just asked like, oh, what is your gender? Like, are you female or male? And to me, like that's just like pretty straightforward, especially like in Singapore. But then my classmates from the States was like, like, what if I don't want to associate with any of the pronouns? What if I'm not comfortable sharing about my gender? I think like for the first time I was like, I never knew that this is like a thing, and I think it's good to have like this like global perspective in your feedback that does help you improve on your UX design for like a more cohesive, wide range target audience. So basically for me, why I asked that question is because I wanted to protect against like gender related illness in my insurance plan. So with that feedback in mind, it improved my design that after I asked the question like, oh, what is your gender, I added a info blip. So like if someone like hovers over my info blip, it kind of like pops up and be like, why are we asking for this? Even though like it was a pretty like small feedback, I really appreciated the idea of like having like global classmates. I've made friends from like all over the world. I've made friends from like Finland, from Korea, UK, and like even when I traveled to like Europe for my holiday the other time, I kind of met up one of my friends who lived in like Oxford, and she brought me around and thought like that was really nice. So if your question to me is like, did I make any Singaporean friends throughout my time at DesignLab? My answer would be no. There were a few Singaporeans and I did like message them on Slack, but I think like it kind of just like never flowed through, which was totally fine. Like it didn't bother me at all. A bit of like tips on how you can make friends during like your group crit: either give feedback or present your work. If you present your work and someone gives you feedback, what I would do is I would send them a Slack message. I know like now it has moved on to Discord, but at my time it was Slack. So I would send them a Slack message to be like, oh, thank you so much for your feedback. It was very like helpful for me. Let me know if you need any help with your like user research or usability testing. I'll be more than happy to help. So that is one route. Or the other way that you can go about it is, let's say if someone presented their work and you didn't really have time to like give feedback during the group crits, what I would do is I would also send them a Slack message and be like, oh, these are some resources that I feel like could be quite helpful to like your query or like to like the work that you presented. One of my regrets not being more proactive in making friends at the beginning, like what changed my mind is when I had this friend from Finland and she reached out to me first and she was like, if you're keen, like let's do a coffee chat someday. And I was like, yeah, sure. We talked about DesignLab, we talked about live. I asked her about Finland, she asked me about Singapore, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And like even until today, like even though we've graduated, like we still keep in touch and we still like video call each other often. Like that's just like really beautiful, like to make friends despite this like LDR. If you kind of feel like you're not really vibing with anyone in that group crit, what I would suggest is just to, you know, attend different group crits at like different timings. I feel like everyone's journey can kind of be a bit lonely, so I think it's kind of nice if you have someone like to connect to and relate to during this like online course. So I kind of feel like I rambled on, and I think like this is like the end of the video. Let me know like if it was helpful for you, or if you have any other questions, feel free to just like leave it in the comments below. Overall, my thoughts is that I personally enjoyed DesignLab, and it was one of the best things that I decided for myself. Every day I kind of wake up and feel like I'm so thankful to wake up and like do something that I like, and I really love my job. And I would like to thank you for staying until like this part of the video. I really enjoyed preparing for it and sharing with you my experience. So I wish that you have a good day today. Bye bye.